Backup data migration is a cost-effective approach towards migrating data of value from legacy backup tapes to disk for easy access and easy management, as well as the ability to manage the hidden risk associated with content within those legacy backups. One of the issues with legacy backup data is it's been very difficult to manage. It's expensive to maintain. So if you're an existing organization that's migrated from one backup vendor to another, you probably need to keep an instance of that backup software in place in order to access that content. It becomes expensive to be able to understand what exists there and to be able to get access to it when you need to. Most of that stuff probably has no value, but in the case of e-discovery, legal compliance, you may need to get access to specific files or documents. Getting it off of legacy tapes, especially as the tapes age, is often very complex and very expensive and may require the use of third-party services providers in order to achieve that goal. The hidden risk and liability of content that exists on backup tapes, it can be significant. So it's really a snapshot or an image of every content, all the email, all the files that exist within your enterprise over 5, 10, 15 years. So there is definitely sensitive content in there that really needs to be managed according to corporate records management and policies. Index Engines provides a data management and preservation platform that can work with legacy backup content, backup images on tape or disk, and it's a very simple process. Through the ingestion of the legacy catalog, you can get a very high level of view into that content. So if you are maintaining an instance of a non-production backup software up and running in order to get access to legacy tapes, you can retire those legacy backup environments in order to get access to the content and utilize Index Engines not only to get access to the content and manage the catalog, but also to execute policy and to expire data and to archive data and to develop disposition strategies. So once the catalog is ingested into Index Engines, it inherits the backup policies. You can define your own retention policies and expire data based on certain date ranges or criteria. And one of the key issues with the Index Engines platform is as you ingest the catalog, you can go into a process which extracts a single instance of that content or that backup data into an online archive. So as you know, backup data can be very redundant. So being able to pull a single instance of that content or a culled subset of that content, if you know specifically what you need, into an online archive makes that data much more accessible. The next level of access that Index Engines provides is deep metadata level indexing. So what is deep metadata? Deep metadata gets beyond the simple metadata of files and email repositories like EDBs and PSTs, but it goes inside those repositories. So for things like PSTs, NSF containers, EDBs, it'll provide you a metadata view of the email content within those repositories. So it's a deep view into that email content. It's searchable. It allows you to search and find content. It supports very simplified access to files and email data and allows you to, once you have a single instance of that data off of tape, to remediate those legacy tapes. So it's a process that not only goes beyond just the management of the catalog, it allows you to provide access and management of the content and really execute policies and remediation strategies and disposition strategies against the content. So not a one-for-one replacement of the catalog capabilities. It's definitely a superset of the capabilities, providing much more access and management. So if you look at the existing data center environment where you have your backup media server that's either backing up to disk or backing up to tape, there's a number of costs associated with that environment. So it's not only the data center cost, but the offsite storage costs for those tapes. So if you are maintaining a non-production backup environment, you've got to maintain the non-production backup software and keep that under maintenance. You've got the data center and manpower costs to keep that solution under maintenance as well. You've got the offsite tape storage costs, which could be significant. And then you've got tape retrieval costs and e-discovery costs as well. So really this is a good fit for organizations that really have a lot of risk or liability or legal requirements of restoring and getting access to those legacy tape content. So you've got significant hard costs associated with that environment. There are some additional costs you can see here in the bottom left associated with that environment, which is really the pain and the time that it requires to get access to those legacy tape data. So if you don't have the appropriate version or backup software installed, you've got to get it installed and up and running. Just the management of that content, finding the appropriate tapes, retrieving them from offsite storage, and so on. The hidden risk and liability, so if you talk to your legal or compliance teams, they get nervous about that content that's not managed properly or not managed according to information governance policies, and not knowing what's there and the unknown is not a great strategy in terms of managing risk and liability. And basically, our customers are seeing that tapes are really not a good long-term archive for data that has value to the business. It's a cheap way to store data for disaster recovery, but as they age and become long-term archives, organizations are finding that they're very difficult to manage and are not providing the archive capabilities that are required to manage data. If you have ever gone through a restoration of data from tape, especially data tapes that are aged, there's a number of things that add to the cost and the pain associated with getting data off of tapes. So the typical data restore request, if you need to go to a tape that's 5-10 years old to get email and files off those tapes, you've got to really determine which tapes they are that you need to retrieve from, pay the cost of retrieval from offsite storage, determine what backup software and what version was used, find an appropriate tape drive, whether it be DLT, LTO, 8mm, and so on. Find the resources to install and manage the appropriate version of the backup software. Then you need to restore everything, the full tape content to disk. So if you've got some current tapes which are have multiple or terabytes of data on there, it's going to be a significant volume of data restored to disk. You need to index that data and search it to find what you need, secure that data and deliver it to legal. And then you've got to preserve and hold those tapes in a vault until the legal hold expires to make sure they're preserved, and then to return the tapes to offsite storage at additional expense. So it becomes very complicated when you're dealing with tapes as a long-term archive in order to produce data to support legal and compliance. Taking that environment and migrating it to a single instance of content on disk. So you can create a legacy data archive. It's a single instance of all the data, so it eliminates the redundancy of the content that's on tape. It is a forensic migration, so it makes sure that all the metadata is intact. It's not going to corrupt any of the access dates or the owners of the content. It's very, very critical we know that that data is maintained and accurate based on the original metadata criteria. This environment, the index engine's searchable archive, allows you to search and report on that data, the file and the email data, again, a deep metadata index of the content. There's an option to turn on full text search capability as well, so if you need to search for keywords, look for patterns like PII, Social Security numbers, credit card numbers, you can accomplish that as well. There's powerful reporting and analysis of the content, so you can review what exists in that single instance of that legacy tape data, legacy backup data, and determine the disposition strategy of that content. On-demand restore, you can get access to data very easily. You're not extracting it from backup formats and backup images. You can apply retention policies and manage the risk and expire data as required. And then you can remediate data that has no value. So you've already deduplicated it, but you can remediate the data that has long outlived its business value. So there's a lot of advantage to doing so by migrating a complex environment of data that's in proprietary formats and offsite storage into a single, easy-to-use instance of that content that's online and accessible. If you do have any questions, our contact information is here. Feel free to reach out to Index Engines, review our website, and we can discuss your needs on managing legacy backup data